Are you planning your own wedding? Are you stuck for styling ideas? Feeling a little overwhelmed? Then this is the podcast for you. I'm your host and wedding planner, Vanessa from the Wedding and Event Creators, and I'm here to bring you practical hints and tips to kickstart your wedding planning. You're listening to the South Coast Wedding Podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by our DIY wedding checklist. It can be found on our website, www.weddingandeventcreators.com.au/blog. Let's get wedding planning. Welcome to today's podcast. We are talking about important things to consider when having a beach ceremony. Now, beach ceremonies are super popular, especially over the warmer months in Australia, as everyone loves the beach. But there are some important things to have a good think about when deciding if a beach ceremony is for you, and some really great tips on how to host your ceremony on the beach. Number one is noise. So being a public location, there can be a ton of noise in and around the beach. So it is really important to have a think about how you can accommodate for this. So noises like seagulls, the beach itself, cars driving by, and the general public can all play a bit of a part. So ensuring that your celebrant has a really good PA system and is comfortable in projecting their voice so that all your guests can hear is really important, and making sure that the ceremony chairs are not too far away from your arbor so that the guests are in a nice and close position in and around you. Doing a test or a trial run might be really helpful for something like this as well. Number two is heat and shade. So there are no trees or dappled sunlight on the beach compared to a garden ceremony. And depending on the time of year, as we all know, it can be super, super hot on the beach. So it's really important that your guests are comfortable, especially as they're standing there in 35-degree heat in their suits. Some ideas to have a think about or include in your wedding might be having a drink station on entry to the beach with some nice iced lemon water. Having parasols or umbrellas available so guests can shade themselves on the sand, remembering that they're often getting there 20 minutes before the bride even arrives. Having your MC let guests relax in the shade and then come into the heat on the sand just prior to the ceremony. And considering having your ceremony on a reserve overlooking the ocean where there may be some sand rather than directly on the beach, so you might get a bit of dappled sunlight for some nearby trees. Number three is wind and tides. The realities are that unfortunately on the beach it is rarely mild, slightly warm, slightly perfect day, especially on the south coast. So it is important to consider that nature definitely does play its part in having a ceremony on the beach. Factor in things like wind. Where you're going to have material from your arbor. The wind can really play havoc on material draping and draw attention to the wind, so maybe have a little think about not having it on top of your arbor. Tides. Some beaches are quite thin, and it means that there may not be enough space for the ceremony and chairs to be set up when the tide is high. So consider placing a ceremony on another beach or another area of the beach, or even on a different angle rather than directly at the ocean, just to make sure that the ceremony doesn't get swept away. So make sure that you go at the similar tide that your wedding's going to be so that you can just double check that it's all going to be fit well on the beach for you. So our next point is number 4, which is accessibility. So how accessible is the beach that you want to get married on? Do you have elderly guests that are attending that might not be able to walk on the sand or down a long sandy path? Have a think about your guest list prior to locking in your ceremony location. And also ensure that your celebrant and the stylist are comfortable working on the sand. In the middle of January on the beach, it can be a very difficult environment to set up a wedding. Trust us, it gets super, super hot. So just have a really good think about all the vendors and your guests involved. Our next point is number 5, and that is permits. Have you considered what council permit is required to have your ceremony on the beach? Some beaches in our region and certain regions don't allow ceremonies or have very strict restrictions. So some of those restrictions are things like maximum 30 guests, no amplified music, no ceremony flowers or ceremony arbors. So have a really good look into what the restrictions are of the permit just before you get your heart set on the location. Number 6 is privacy. So being in a public space, you need to have considerations for the privacy of your ceremony that is going to be held on a beach. The public have access so that you have people swimming in front of your arbour in the ocean or walking in bathers next to your dolled up wedding guests. So some times of the year, like weekends or during school holidays, are even busier. So just have a good think about the time of year when deciding on your ceremony location and date. Number 7, and last of all, is the backup plan. The most important of them all, as I keep talking about. It's really, really important to have a great backup plan. So no matter where your ceremony is held, you need to have options in place if it's not going to be the best weather. The beach is not protected like a garden ceremony, so it means that it's at high risk of having wind or rain or the elements. So having something on hold or a clear backup plan discussed with your wedding planner, your celebrant and your stylist is really important in advance so that everyone's on the same page. So there are lots and lots of things to consider when you're choosing a beach ceremony, more so than probably other ceremony locations, but being prepared and aware means that you can host your perfect beach ceremony. You just need to have all these things in place and considered. So thanks for listening today and best of luck with your beach ceremony, and we'll catch you at the next podcast. Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. Make sure you jump onto our social media pages for more hints, tips and inspo. You can find us on Instagram at Wed Event Creators, on Pinterest at Wed Event Creator, and also via our Facebook page. And please don't forget to visit our website weddingandeventcreators.com.au to see our video tutorials and helpful blog posts.